Emily, Emily, you
Hey.
founded Heated, which frames the climate crisis as a high stakes corruption, power, and disinformation story.
Can you
And I would
imagine?
like to know what, why you chose this frame and what can Hollywood learn from telling the climate story through your systemic lens?
Thank you, Jane. That's a good question. Do you guys know why I chose to frame climate change as a power, corruption, and disinformation story? I, like I said earlier, I covered climate change in Washington, D.C. from ever since I was 23 in 2013. And I jumped around from publication to publication. And I always found my stories sort of not prioritized, sort of not maybe taken as seriously as other beats. It was very rare that I would have a dedicated climate change editor, somebody that knew more about my beat than I did. And that that was fine in the first few years, but as I continued to tell stories actually exactly like these. I would tell stories about oil industry opposing setback laws in California, and I would travel to Houston and visit frontline communities that were right next to oil refineries, and I'd go to northern Canada and see indigenous communities living downstream of tar sands development with the logo of the oil company pasted all over their town. And the only jobs that those people are able to get are with the oil company that is poisoning them. I'm years and years past. I'm covering climate deniers, saying this, spreading the same lies over and over, and I'm starting to get mad. I'm just because I feel like I'm not allowed to say like this is we're not everyone here is being made to feel like climate change is some problem that we all contribute to. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing a system designed to make us feel that way and designed to keep this crisis going for profit, a crisis that kills people. And I'm supposed to sit here and be objective and be some kind of and give both sides and give the fossil fuel industry's side. We have documents from 40 years ago that say they knew about climate change. Eventually, I kind of got fed up having to pitch this story over and over again. Every now and then I could do an accountability story and really look at the villains, which is what I want to do, right? As a journalist, as somebody that came up under a really badass investigative journalist in New York named Wayne Barrett, he he was all about taking it to these villains that were in the name of something that they truly thought was good, hurting people, and holding them accountable for that. And I would be able to treat oil companies as villains sometimes, but I would always be like, well, you're kind of sounding like an activist. And I'm like, I'm a journalist. I just wanted to continue to speak that truth to power. And after 8 years of working at other publications telling me that that approach was not going to work, I kind of wanted to just test it for myself. So I quit my job. I started Heated, and Heated has almost 75,000 subscribers today, and this is how we approach the climate story. And this is like my thing now, is I just go around and tell people, if you think the climate story is boring, if you think that it's depressing, if you think that people just aren't going to want to pay attention to it, you're not looking at it in the right way. You may still believe that climate change is something that is happening to you and not something that is being done to you. And that's the reality of what we're looking at. Every single story that you've heard today is an extremely compelling story about an individual fighting a systemic problem, and the systemic problem can be traced back to people with names and addresses and and backstories. And that's so compelling. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is a completely good versus bad issue, because no stories are truly like that. But that's what makes storytelling, effective storytelling, so rich, right? I mean, think of the movies that win Oscars, right? They have a clear villain, but you can kind of you see that the villain has convinced themselves that what they are doing is right. And you see that with fossil fuels, because fossil fuels power so much of society today, right? It's the analogy that I like to make sometimes is that it's like a doctor has given you medicine that makes you super strong and fast and awesome, and everyone is taking this medicine. And we're so used to this medicine that we're like, well, how could I not be super strong and fast all the time? But there's a side effect to the medicine, and it's gonna kill a bunch of you. Um, and if it doesn't kill a bunch of you, it's going to really, really harm you. Like, the side effects of this medicine are really messed up, and they get worse and worse and worse. And if you take a certain amount of this medicine, there's no going back. But then the medical company is like, and the people that work for it are like, okay, well, but everyone's really strong and fast. And oh, you don't want us to be strong and fast? Oh, do you want small people to not be strong and fast? Oh, okay, I guess. And you're like, well, we have this other medicine that also makes people strong and fast and doesn't kill them. And they're like, no, you don't. That medicine doesn't work. Um, you know, and then there's propaganda all over your life being like, the strong and fast medicine has side effects, but we're working on solving them. We're totally, we're totally there, and we're fixing them. And then you have the medicine companies in your schools making sure that the textbooks are filled with information about how good the medicine is. These are stories. These are real stories that are happening with fossil fuels and climate change. It's one of the craziest things to me that people are like, I can't find a compelling way to tell the climate story. Look harder.